Hello everybody, thanks for joining me for another video. This one is going to be called Fate versus Free Will. A very common topic, one that many people ask questions about in the astrological context. Excuse me for sounding a bit rough, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Fate versus free will, what's it all about? Well, astrologically, we're all fated, but not in the sense that most people understand it. To get a better understanding, one has to delve into one has to dispel certain notions, primarily that the planets do stuff. The planets don't exert any forces. They don't do things to us. As I mentioned in a previous video, the natal chart is a symbol, if you will, of the moment of our birth and the quality of our birth. Second thing you have to know is that nothing happens without there being a promise in the chart, and I'll explain what a promise in the chart means. So let's get into it. So say you were born, say you're a Leo. Excuse me. Say you've got a Leo sun, and let's say it's 15 degrees of Leo. Well, that is now becomes a sensitive point in the chart. Let's say natally you've got a Jupiter trining that Leo sun. Well, needless to say, there's a lot of good energy there. The sun rules Leo, as we'll get into that later. And a Jupiter trining anything is a good sign. So there's optimism and there's a lot of promise in the chart, primarily depending upon the house that Leo finds itself in and the house that Jupiter is in and the sign that it's in. Well, that's not hard to work out. 120 degrees from Leo would either be Sagittarius, which is a fire sign as well, and Sag, Jupiter and Sag is at home, so it's a good one. Or 120 degrees from that would be Aries. Jupiter and Aries, might be overconfident, might promise too much. And in fact, that's what Jupiter does. Promises a lot and delivers very little, but we'll get into that in another story. Okay, so nothing happens without the promise in the chart. Always remember that. Don't go and predict stuff. Don't go and predict good stuff when the person has got Saturn squaring their Venus and you say, oh, you're going to have this wonderful love affair. It's not going to happen. Especially if it's a man's chart. Now, let me explain that a bit. The moon and Venus in a man's chart represent the woman in his life. The sun and Mars in a woman's chart represent the men in her life. Easy to understand. The feminine archetypes, Venus and the moon. So the feminine energy in a man's chart, and Sun and Mars, the masculine energy in a woman's chart. And notwithstanding, of course, a 7th house influence, which is a house of partners, as we'll get into all this. And perhaps their 7th house ruler which is another topic. So look for the promise in the chart. And the more you do astrology, the more you will begin to understand exaltations, rulerships, detriments, and all of these types of things. But in order to identify the promise, and I'm going to say this word a lot, do not predict stuff that is not in the chart. Okay, so fate versus free will. What is it all about? Well, simply this. As mentioned in an earlier video, we are reflected in the patterns, in the celestial patterns above. So, what does that mean? It means like this. It means that, let's say you've got Uranus crossing your 4th house cusp. Well, it's not rocket science again. Use keywords: Uranus, upset, change, sudden change, 4th house, home. You get the picture already, right? Okay, so the fact that Uranus is going to transit, that means go over or approach the 4th house cusp in your chart. That means that Jupiter is going to approach the lowest point in your natal chart, and that being the 4th house cusp, generally using equal house, which is something we'll get into. So if Uranus is going to transit the 4th house, expect a change of home or some sudden upset, something you won't see coming because it's Uranus. What happens is this, is that usually there's a trigger. We call it a trigger, and the trigger is invariably something like the moon. So you cannot stop Uranus in the sky. It's going to cross the 4th house cusp, whether you like it or not. Fate. Right. How much control do we have? Well, that's the issue. How do you handle what's going to happen? Do you have the resources? Are you equipped to handle a Uranus 4th house transit? Might be a progression, might be anything. It might be the moon crossing the 4th house cusp by progressions, which we'll get into in an advanced section of this course. So let me say this. First, nothing happens unless there's a promise in the chart. Secondly, you cannot stop the planets from moving around the sky. So when something is imminent, you'll see it in the chart. You cannot stop it. It's going to happen. But it's how you deal with it that matters. Okay. Fate versus free will. Fated, free will is how you manage the event. Thanks for joining me. I hope you found that interesting. Ciao. Bye.